everybody. Jen Hatmaker here, your delighted host of the For the Love podcast. You guys, welcome so much to the show. Golly, I'm so glad you're here today. This episode is so lively and interesting, and I just was tickled and super smitten kitten with today's guest. Okay, so let me back up. Right now, we're in a series. It's called For the Love of Dating, Sex, and Relationships. Probably no big shock why I wanted to have a series like this. This is where I'm at in my life. I am in dating, sex, and relationships. So thus, we are now having a series about it. And it's been so interesting. We've talked to so many different people with different ideas across the spectrum of dating and singlehood and marriage and bodies. And we're not just trying to hit one note here, right? We're trying to really keep it sort of comprehensive. And so as a whole, this whole series has been so instructive, and I hope is illuminating to you as it has been to me. Like, honestly, I understand that I get to use my own show to explore topics that are relevant to my own life. But I am always hoping and pretty sure that those subjects reflect where so many of you are as well. And being in this new, pretty vulnerable world of post-divorce plus dating and relationship and all of it. It's so great to have you as a community to wrap our heads around all of this together. And I know that we are, because you're telling me your stories. You're telling me where you're at in your life. You're telling me all the Me Too moments that I'm sharing that you can identify with. And so I know that tons of us are in this together. Now, frankly, I don't know the rules of dating, as you know, and honestly, I don't care. Tyler, the wonderful man in my life right now, he saw this quite early in our dating relationship, which you've heard me tell the story, when I was just like, we're just talking and talking. And by the way, excuse me, we were talking a lot. So let's not act like he and I were talking in some normal human way and I was overreacting. Like, excuse me, do you talk on the phone to a person for 3 hours? You don't. Like, we were talking in high school, but we were many conversations deep into that sort of like, oh my gosh, it's 2 a.m. Why are we still on the phone? When I finally just said, okay, so what's happening here between us? Like, what is this? Like, do you like me? And he was like, oh my gosh. He couldn't even really answer me for a day, because apparently he's just not used to being that on the nose about something. I guess you're supposed to play it coy. I don't really know. Like I said, don't know, don't care. Anyway, it worked out. So in my define the relationship moment, we obviously know that there are unsaid, but also widely understood rules in the dating world, but whatever, man. I'm just decided that what I care about at this stage of my life is clarity and honesty. And I don't even have game. I wouldn't even know how to play one. I'm so sure. So I'm thinking a lot about what it means to love again these days, right? And particularly out of the newfound strength of recovery and learning the joy of my own freedom and my own power, feeling really comfortable in my own skin, not needing another person to make it all right for me, that I'm just delaying my own happiness until I've got a relationship. That is too much pressure to put on any one person. So getting to meet Tyler from a place of security and wholeness has just been, it's like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. Now, what does it look like to open yourself back up to someone, right? To open yourself up to the risk of love, because there's a chance that it turns out beautiful, and there's a chance you will get your heart broken again. What does it really mean to be known by somebody? Which is a big deal. And we share that. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've been married forever. I don't care if you've never been married. I don't care if you're divorced, if you're dating, whatever it is, we share this need to be known. Like, I've talked about this online, how worried I was last year about no one ever knowing me. Like, I was married for 26 years. That's a very long time. It's literally my entire adult life. And some of those years weren't even adult, since I was a 19-year-old bride. Those are teen years too. So just having somebody at that point be the keeper of every adult thing about me felt like a really scary and sad thing to lose alongside the marriage. It was all this institutional knowledge. And I'm like, God, who will ever know me like this again? You can't manufacture that many years of experiences and knowledge. And but I told this story recently about being in Nashville staying with Tyler, and excuse me, he has a whole book called I Take My Coffee Black, and right in his refrigerator is my absolute favorite garbage Almond Joy coffee creamer. And I was just like, oh, wow, you can be known again. You can, even in the small little things. And surprising to me is that it can be delightful to experience all these old things with a new person and watch them discover you and you discover them. I didn't even know that was going to be wonderful. I thought that was going to be a burden. Okay. I'm diverting right now. I'm diverting into some relationship space. Because my guest today, among her many, many charms, is that she also kind of went through a pretty public, forward-facing divorce, and then found love again and remarried during the pandemic. And so we share that story, and becoming known by a new person, knowing a new person, is like a possibility that I didn't know could actually be wonderful. So our guest this week, now look, she makes jokes for a living, but you will see this. She does not flinch from the hard conversations. In fact, she is so lovely about them. She leans into them. She a million times, that's exaggeration. Several times during this interview, she'd be like, that is such a good question. I feel so lucky that I get to answer that. And I mean, we were dealing with deep topics around faith and sexuality and gender and expectations and religion and marriage and divorce. So I asked this person to be on the show because I wanted to laugh. But I also wanted to connect the dots with them on moving from loss and grief into the surprising joy of learning yourself again with a new partner who delights in every little piece of you. And so my guest today is Cameron Esposito. Oh, if you know her, you love her. She's an actor, writer, podcaster. She's a stand-up comic. She began her career first by acting the male leads in her elementary Catholic school plays, LOL. She was undoubtedly good. These are her real strengths and skills. And she's since gone on to create and star in her own TV show. She's had roles in mainstream and indie films, headline stand-up tours literally around the US and the world. She currently plays the lesbian love interest on A Million Little Things on ABC. Massive show, a major show, an incredible opportunity for her. She recently wrote her first book called Save Yourself, which became an instant bestseller, which tells her story of growing up queer and gender nonconforming in a deeply devout Catholic community. As a deeply devout Catholic person, which you'll hear her talk about in the show. Her podcast, Query, hosts LGBTQ luminaries and has inadvertently become a beloved archive of sorts for the queer community and their stories. She even raised $100,000 for RAIN, the US's largest anti-sexual violence organization, when she released her stand-up special, which is just amazing. That's so meaningful to me. She is using her influence and her notoriety for good. I enjoyed this conversation so much. I wanted it to go on. I think I made it last too long. And I am just a huge fan. So I don't think it needs to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. We are beyond thrilled to welcome Cameron Esposito to the For the Love family today. So without any further ado, y'all enjoy this delightful conversation. Cameron. Welcome to the For the Love podcast. I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you for my tiny round of applause. That is, as a stand-up comic, that is how I know it's time to start. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like that's how I'm like, oh, got it. Okay, I'm at work.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Or the absolute lack of applause means it's time to end. That's
oh
it.
boy.
Oh boy. Yeah.
That is a tough one. Sometimes even a set's going really well, but then in my mind I can think like, here's going to be the big closer.
Oh,
and there's nothing planned for after that.
Oh,
and usually you can kind of like, with a little timing and effort, land it regardless. But there are times where have I ever said that was the end? Yeah, I have. I've said I don't have, that was the end. I don't have any other stuff. So
gosh, like I'm not a comic, but I'm a speaker and I do a lot of funny storytelling. So I know what it's like to stand in front of a crowd with a story, with a punchline, with that one thing that I wrote. And I'm like, this kills. This sentence kills. Like Absolutely. If I heard this, I'd burst out laughing. And then it's that moment when you try it out for the first time in front of the first crowd. And it's just like, it's crickets. Like the whole room is silent. And it'll even sort of reverses from you a little bit. Everybody's like, oh no, we didn't like it. Like we didn't like it. We're not here for it. And it's just a certain kind of little small internal death is how that
yes. Personality wise, here's a question. Will you then try that again and again until it works? Or will you say bye-bye and throw it in the trash?
That's a really good question. So it's probably a combination of both. I'm going to assess the audience. What city am I in? What's this region? What's this demographic? I might have stepped on some geographical toes that would just slay in New York. It's just not going to work here in Minneapolis. Right. And so I try to like gauge where I'm at, but also the audiences are usually right. They're usually
That's so funny. And also, by the way, almost nothing slays in New York. Because that is, to me, the worst place to perform in the whole planet. God, because they've seen everything. They saw everything on the way to the show. They saw like trained rats playing in an orchestra in the subway. So it literally doesn't matter what my stories are. Just
you cannot impress a New Yorker. You cannot.
Get out of here.
No, they're unimpressible. They're like, look, we saw Amy Poehler when she was just hustling down on the corner. Okay, you're not that funny, Jen Hatmaker. Right. Okay. I'm so happy to meet you. I have so many questions for you. Let's start here. You grew up Catholic. You have a theology degree. That's very weird and random. This is such a random set of things that you have on your resume. Even pursued, and we're going to get to this, like becoming a priest during the pandemic. And so I want to start with some of this framework. You've talked about having a tough coming out experience during college. You walked entirely away from faith or spirituality for a while, understandably. And frankly, you and I could spend our entire time talking about this because I originally came up also through a faith space. And have had much movement from that little tidy epicenter from which I sprung. So I'd love if you wouldn't mind talking for a few minutes, if you would, about what did your like sort of deconstruction of faith look like for you then? And what does the reconstruction of it in whatever way that it has been or is or isn't look like now? I'd love to hear your process on this. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are somewhere in the spectrum of like, this is what I was handed and taught when I was a baby kid. This is where my cognitive dissonance was, or my personal traumatic or painful experience. These are the questions I'm like in now. This is where I'm at. We're kind of in this space. So we'd love to hear your story if you wouldn't mind sharing it.
Gosh, I mean, the first thing I'll say is that I just feel like I can't believe that I can't believe how blessed, lucky, privileged, whichever word you want to use, that I get to sit here and answer this question as a part of my job. That's so amazing. So many people are dealing with this and nobody ever asks, or sitting with this and don't really have an outlet for that. So that's like my initial reaction to just being asked that question is like,
Yeah.
Wow, that's
like
pretty
it.
amazing. And the next thing that I'll say is, yeah, I was raised really, really Catholic. And then as soon as I could, wanted to get more involved. You know, I was like an altar server, which is like that priest assistant person. And I would go to serve mass, like before school when I was like a little kid, you know, so it's like that level of commitment early. And then when I got to college, you know, many people in college are experimenting with various freedoms. And I was too. I was dating a woman for the first time secretly. But then I also was going to daily mass. I was a Eucharistic minister, which is like you hand out the host, and lived in Rome for a while. I mean, I was really committed. And I think the thing that initially worked on me was just like, I did like reverence. I did like ritual. I did like being together. That's what I think I liked as a little kid. Then as I started to actually study, I liked the like leftist punk rock sort of mystical Jesus, who I still think is a pretty cool guy or set of people that like, you know, I mean, I can't read Aramaic. Like, I don't know what was really said. I wasn't there in the Middle East. But the idea that like peace and joy are at hand and connecting with each other and speaking truth to power are important. Like those things never left me. So when I was coming out, and then the Catholic Church was also going through the sex abuse scandal that then was written in the movie Spotlight is about that time in Boston where it was like the front page of the Boston Globe every single day. And that's where I lived. And I was at Boston College.
Yeah.
Bought land from the Archdiocese of Boston.
Oh my gosh.
That sale went to pay the victims, the survivors of that abuse. That happened the year after I graduated. So like that was the climate of where I was at. Just a school that like I thought had been teaching me one thing, and then the sort of higher level like backdoor processes were so different from this thing that I believed in. So I left like heartbroken. Yeah. And then this is when I really committed hard to comedy because weirdly, comedy is really spiritual for me, and I feel really connected to the audience members, and I feel like I'm speaking about truth and I'm also listening. So it's like the same stuff that I was interested in. I just found it elsewhere. Boy, this is such a long answer to your question, but I think it's all important to the then. So like fast forward truly 20 years. Okay. 20 years of my life, I'm like super Catholic. 20 years of my life, I'm not. And the pandemic is going on. I have gone through like a pretty brutal divorce. Yeah. I have attention and interest around my opinions. Yeah. And my life experience, but not somewhere else to go for guidance. And so there was just like this real like loneliness and like a true bottoming out that happened. And it was from that place that I realized that like, you know, the way I have been connecting through spirituality is sort of like as a leader, you know, I like stand up in the room and everybody else is quiet and then I talk. But that's really tiring after a while. Yeah. And I just wanted some like solace. And so then I went back looking in the places that I had left to see what was there.
I mean, I have a million questions about that. Just a million. And first of all, I can identify with so much of what you were saying. I lost a 26-year marriage in the pandemic, and I'm also looked to as the voice in the room in general. And when that well runs dry, what is there? I'm so curious how you found some of those faith spaces that you returned to after a 20-year hiatus. Did it feel different? Did it feel more true or less true? Were the comforting parts what you remembered, or were there new comforting parts? What did you do with your cognitive dissonance? What did you do with your doubt? And in whatever ways that your beliefs had changed or shifted, like how did you settle back in being a grown-up with very different and evolved and varied perspectives than when you left in the first place? That's a lot. Pick one.
Yeah,
whatever
love
I just
it.
said. I
Love
threw
it.
40 at you. Just pick one. Yes.
I love it. So the first thing that I did was I and it's like mystical that this even occurred to me. But the first thing that I did was, so all schools were online.
Right.
And I was very curious. I had the head of the theology department when I was at BC was somebody I really loved and connected with. And I had some curiosity around what that person was up to now. I was like, I wonder what they're doing now. And it was just one random day. And I Googled this professor, and he was teaching a class at BC that summer. Like it started in like 2 weeks or something. Or like the next, literally like so soon. And it was titled Forgiveness. It was like a online week-long summer course titled Forgiveness.
Wow.
And I emailed him and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was your student 20 years ago, and you know, I'm not enrolled at the university. I'm just wondering like if I could audit this class. And he wrote me back, I don't know, like an hour later, and he was like, oh, first of all, I followed your career and I was just listening to you on NPR because I had just written a book. And it had been covered on NPR. And he was like, I was just listening to you on NPR, and like, yeah, just come take the class. And no problem. So, and also, by the way, what's your phone number? Like, do you want to talk? And so we started having conversations and meeting on Zoom. I took his class. We're still friends. Like we were like emailing yesterday to try to figure out if either of us might be in each other's town to have dinner together. And I think, so this class on forgiveness, it wasn't that I took it and then I felt like all the questions that I had were answered, but it was more just being in an environment where I remembered what I liked about it, which is that people were showing up to ask questions. People were in the same zone that I was of like, what human wisdom exists on this topic, and doing the outside reading to kind of prep themselves for that space. And I do think that curiosity exists outside of those spaces. Like now that I am sort of more open about the fact that this is part of what's in my life, like you and I are talking on this podcast. But before that, I was just kind of talking to stand-up comics in bars. So I just didn't have access to those kinds of conversations. I found myself back in those rooms, and it's like, I don't think that those other students and I agree on everything. But I'm very curious. You know, there were some students that were enrolled that were Chinese nuns. They would be like dissident. They like couldn't, that would be politically radical.
Of course.
And so I think that's the kind of person where I'm just like, what are you doing here? And like, do you have, and anything that you have to say about life, I would love to listen to.
Yeah. That like curiosity about one another, and even just curiosity about the questions is such a better way to live. I think this sort of open-handed, open-minded, not necessarily craving the certainty that, I don't know for you, but it used to be a comfort to me. Certainty used to make me feel safe. and kind of like, it felt like guardrails around me, and the way that I knew what the rules were and I knew what to do and not to do. And then those began to lose their appeal, of course, and then became their own prison ultimately. But curiosity is a completely different posture. And
Totally.
I love it. It has opened me up to learn and to listen and to experience other people's perspectives. And it's, to me, this is the way to do it. And I love that this is finding a new sort of spot on your plate. And thanks for being willing to talk through that and share it. Like, it's interesting to think about go ahead.
I was just saying on the thing about what you're saying about curiosity, you know, like I was raised in a family where I was taught the only people that we should trust to a certain degree was the family. And then I was also raised in a religion where, like, I mean, that's true of Catholicism too. It's not one of those,
certainly,
at least the type of Catholicism I was originally raised in. And then eventually I moved to this like far left, but it's like everybody else is wrong. This idea that it's like, and actually not, and also like they're gonna go to hell. So like, what a fucking bummer. It's like a big deal, you know?
Like, lucky us, we were born into the right families.
Yeah,
same.
Exactly. So I think that, I don't know if it's those things, it's a lot of other stuff too, but what I am always craving is like to get across some finish line and feel totally safe with like my community that never rejects me and never changes, and where like it's an arrival and I have something I'm supposed to do every day and everybody's going to be there. And it's not like, I think I'm looking for this thing in my like deep gut that doesn't exist. I think that's actually like a death fantasy. Like the only time your to-do list is like really fully checked off is like when you're no longer with us. And so I think that thing is actually antithetical to life. And that is why I'm attempting to shift more toward curiosity and like having this stability within myself, as opposed to looking like for this perfect team that's always there.
Absolute same. You applied that rubric really even to your own self when you decided to like stay curious and honest and truthful and examine your own sexuality. You decided to come out when you did, to whatever degree that was accepted or rejected.
100% rejected.
Would you be willing to talk about that for a minute?
Sure,
How old you were and how that, I mean, I understand the community you were raised in. I wasn't raised Catholic. I was raised Southern Baptist, but very similar. Like spiritual hierarchy, spiritual authority, only the men had, essentially, in and out, right and wrong. This is what we do. You definitely can't be gay. So I understand a lot about how you were raised. I wonder if you could talk about that sort of coming really out process to yourself and to everybody else.
Right. Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, it was long and bumpy because I had dated men, I had boyfriends that were like, you know, my boyfriend and I in high school, we were voted class couple. So it was like,
of course,
there was a whole, right.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know, this is like, he was the captain of the football team and I was the mascot.
Sure. Yeah. Oh God. I can't. No,
it's my real life. Anyway,
it's like a little scene in a movie.
I know, but it's my real life.
Yep, it's a real life. That's the truth.
And anyway, so I got to college and I just like fell in love with a woman. Yeah. And
can I ask you a question? Is that something you knew internally in high school, or did it feel confusing to you then?
I didn't have any awareness of sexuality in general. Never had sex ed. Didn't understand that people with vaginas could have orgasms. Like I didn't know about my own biology. Yep. I really like thought premarital sex was wrong. So it was convenient that I didn't want to have it.
That's right.
Because I just could be like holy, you know, like, so
that's right.
So there was a lot of missable stuff. And also is like, I was in high school. I graduated in 2000, so I was in high school in the late 90s, and not having sex ed, not having a family that really talked about anything in this area openly, and then there was no internet for resources.
That's right.
The thing that you could look to was like Cosmopolitan magazine.
That's right.
But
Yes.
all of those articles were about like how to make your boyfriend happy by doing these 7 tricks in bed. There's literally like no acknowledgement that my body even existed, or that I might have like sexual feelings. So like I just was in love with my best friends, but not all of them, but like there was a series of best friends I was in love with. And I just didn't understand that felt different than what my other friends were. Also,
it was a different time. I know people are hearing that thinking, how is that possible? It is possible. That was a different time. And also there was not representation.
There was nobody on television.
Shows, our commercials, like it was different. Like whatever world we lived in is the one we saw most.
Totally. Yeah.
So
100%. I wasn't allowed to watch Ellen. I mean, because that would have been the bad.
Right. It'd have made you gay for sure.
Yeah. So like there was, I'm flipping there. But anyway, yeah, it was, it was not part of anything. And also I think that if you're cultured and raised as a boy, and you're a queer person, I think people tell you if they notice anything about you that seems queer.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like you're kind of bullied specifically for that.
Yeah.
I was bullied for like body stuff. Because it is socially permissible for girls to like sleep in the same bed at a sleepover. Again, it's like
you're so
really confusing. So
anyway,
I had no idea. I got to college.
Okay.
I fell in love with this woman. I didn't even know that that's what was actually happening until we were like kissing. And then after we were kissing, I was still trying to date men. And I still like was closeted and had a public boyfriend. So, I mean, things were confusing for a real long time.
Yeah.
This is why when anybody who's like, why do we need to have these characters on TV? Or like, stop shoving it down my throat. And it's like, well, this is actually just the world. Like, so weird that
it isn't an agenda. It's just literally a representation.
Yes.
So, like,
yes. And then, so when people like me are actually, so to not have those characters is actually to remove us from the world. It's not additive of people who don't exist in your community. It's
so good.
If we're not there, you've removed us.
That's right. My 22-year-old daughter is queer. And I was talking about representation one time publicly. And I was like, hey guys, guess what? I don't mean to shock you. Because we were talking about representation, just like in the ordinary space, commercials, advertisements. I'm like, I do not mean to shock you, but gay people brush their teeth. I know, I know. I don't do what you will with it, but like, they also have like gum health, okay? And they deserve toothpaste. So it matters. Like the world that my kids see right now is not the one that you and I saw.
Yes, absolutely. And some of this stuff is like
movement,
and it's corrective for mistakes that have been made in the past, as opposed to moving forward. I think about like the Gina Davis Institute, which is they study women in television and film, and they did this poll where they were trying to understand what percentage of people featured on screen are men versus women. And I don't think that they had a gender expansive view at the time, because this is from a few years ago. But 17% of the people in crowd scenes are women. And this is not different in animation. So even when we draw what we think the world looks like, and we're 50, again, this is not necessarily counting for non-binary folks, but women are 51% of the population. So when we look at TV and then there's like suddenly people freak out, oh my God, there's so many women in this show. It's like, well, that's just because you've been watching TV that doesn't look like the world.
That's so interesting.
Anyway, I could talk about anything for a really long time, Jen, so please keep me on track.
Clearly the same. I have so many points of connection with you. I'm like, we can
all
go
I do is, exactly.
I love it, and I thank you. Thanks for your candor.
If you are not a member of the Jen Hatmaker Book Club, what in the world are you waiting for? It's time to come join the club. We're even offering you $5 off your first month to check us out over at jenhatmakerbookclub.com. We have some amazing books lined up and great authors for you to get to know. And when you're a member, you get so much stuff every month. Of course, you get the book box with the book and a special gift and a little love note from me. But you also get a whole bunch of digital resources like discussion guides and custom content and music playlists from our authors. I also host video podcasts with me and our author from that month, as well as Facebook live chats where you have a chance to get on Zoom with me to talk about our book that month. We're also rolling out more virtual events and in-person experiences in the near future. And we do this thing called Golden Tickets, where we send little surprise gifts and fun things to members just because. Finally, we have the best community ever, where of course we talk about the books, but also about so many other things, every other thing, all of life. And we have local chapters that meet in real life sprinkled all across the country. I'm telling you, these are your people. Come and join us. Use the code READ, that's READ, for $5 off your first month at jenhatmakerbookclub.com.
I would like to talk a little bit with you about, so you had a girlfriend that you accidentally fell in love with while still having the public facing boyfriend in college. Eventually, I don't know how long it took you to be like, wait a minute, I like girls. Like officially, that's officially my deal.
Years.
And then was it years?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'd love to hear about once you felt pretty clear in your identity, more clear, I should say.
Yeah.
More clear. What was dating like for you? Because again, you weren't in the Wild West like people before our generation, but you weren't also in this day and age. Which it's different, and
right.
It's more accessible, and it is easier, and there's so much more to look at and to learn from.
Right.
You were still kind of feeling your way around.
Such a good question.
What was it like?
Gosh, here's something I think is interesting is that so I've never used the internet for dating at all. I've never been on an app at all, which I think is actually unusual for somebody my age.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And part of that is very early. I got my first job in comedy the day after I graduated from college. Wow. So very early, I had, I think, a different opportunity than most folks to meet people. And so I have always had a lot of options in dating. Yeah. And I know it's not just because I think I do a job that's attractive. It literally the word attract, it attracts people in to watch. And then I think I'm somebody that has always had, even in, if it's just a local community, a different amount of visibility. So if people are trying to figure out how to meet another queer person, then they can look around the bar and be like, well, one of them is on stage. So I guess we'll just go with the really obvious one,
Totally.
so then So one thing that I have not had actually a ton of opportunity to do is be single. This has just not been a big part of my life. And that's something that I'm actually I'm actually remarried. That divorce happened several years before the pandemic, and then the feelings merged into the pandemic. And so now it's been a lot of years and I'm remarried, and some of that is the age that the divorce happened, and then sort of how I felt like I was right at the part in my life where I wanted to create stability and create a family and create a household. And then I met this wonderful person. But I wonder if I was maybe a little older and I already had kids or something like that, or if I was a little younger and I was more wild, if that would have been a bigger dating time for me in there. But
it's so interesting to try to do the postmortem on your own, first marriage and divorce, because same
God!
It's so weird because first of all, we're looking in the rearview mirror. Second of all, it's my rearview mirror, and I see it a certain way.
Right.
And I don't know how self-aware I was at the time. How old were you when you got married first?
Well, again, I was 35 when I got married. And
Okay.
some of that is also, this is wild because I know we're going to forget this. I'm not saying you're forgetting this, but I forget this. That was sort of like the soonest it could happen legally.
Oh,
like,
of course.
I bet. I mean, I lived in Massachusetts when Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, and I was super duper young. And so I didn't marry my girlfriend, even though I like was on the State House steps watching the first couples come out, and I did say to her, like, should we just like do it? So, but I'm really glad. Yeah. I'm really glad we didn't, because I was 22. And then I moved to Chicago, where it was illegal for a lot of years, and so I had people I dated and lived with. How old were you? I feel like you were
I can't
a young
tell you.
person.
I literally can't tell you. I mean, I can, and I'm about to. My community already knows this, but I came up through such a marry young culture, like where marriage is paramount. I mean, that's it. That's what you do. And you lock that shit down as soon as you can. And you start doing the thing and building. Okay, fine. I was 19. I was a literal teenager.
Yes. I mean, that it's like surprising, and it's not surprising.
Yeah, exactly.
My community, a little older than that. Like,
that's right.
I went to a lot of weddings right after the year, like
22,
year,
23,
or the summer
24,
after college graduation. That was the big ones when people were, and I had a friend who met her then husband in that era at a bachelor and spinsters ball that she attended. Like, she was 22, the age of 22. And so
spinsters ball. I can't.
Yeah, I think the only difference is there was an expectation of a college graduation prior. In the different communities that I grew up in, but other than that, it was like then right after that, get married. So that also made it weird to be a gay person, because then I was like,
what do I do? What
am I supposed to do?
Yeah. What's my path?
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, you didn't have one at the time. I mean, you did. You had a path. You could be in love and be in partnership and live together, but you didn't have a marriage path at the time. And then, of course, you also didn't have wide-reaching acceptance inside your subculture. And so you had to negotiate your own sense of belonging, because you probably knew, if I'm true, if I'm out, if I'm living in integration and in alignment with who I actually am, I am going to experience some rejection from the community that raised me. I just am.
Yeah.
And you probably did.
Yeah, it already had happened, because this is part of why I like stayed closeted in college, is that there was no protection in the non-discrimination policy at BC at the time. So you could be like, you could be removed from the faculty for being gay. And when I did tell my parents, it went really badly. It was bad for a bunch of years, and now it is truly it's like, it's not the word. I don't even know how to describe it, because it's like, clearly my parents are okay with who I am. Like, that's like, that just feels like such a given at this point. But yeah, it just was not true for a long time, and it wasn't true for my friends for a long time. So, and then even in terms of what you're talking about, it's like, I guess people lived together and stuff like that, but like, I didn't even know, like, can you rent an apartment and you go see it, and there's two, and you're queer, like in the, and by the way, that housing discrimination is a real thing. Like, that does actually happen, and it's legal. That's in many states to discriminate. So
you're right. It wasn't just a preference to stay in the closet or a fear-based response. It was literally probably in a lot of ways for your own protection. Which
it was.
It's really so weird. Confusing. That wasn't even that long ago, and some of it's still on the books.
I'm from now.
You're from now. You're in the now times.
I know.
And so, it's kind of shocking.
It is shocking. I mean, technically, by birthday, I'm a millennial. I mean, I'm the oldest.
You barely made it.
I am the
honestly,
oldest.
You barely made it.
I am the oldest and the most geriatric millennial, but I am technically a millennial.
And you're the crankiest of the crew.
Yes.
I
do use TikTok. So I am still from now.
I want to you this question, and you can feel free to say like, yeah, I don't want
Sure.
to answer that. I wonder if we can talk about enjoying sex and negotiating
Great.
boundaries with our bodies. Even though I'm straight and you're queer, we both kind of came up through purity culture where everybody was like, we don't have sex until we're married. And of course, the onus was put on girls. That pushed a lot of us who were kind of rule followers and precious into young marriages because
Yes, that's right.
we felt like that was the only safe place for that to belong. Anyway,
Yes.
whatever, man. Like I got divorced 2 years ago after 26 years. And so now I'm out here in this new world as a grown lady, grown with all my brain developed, and in a relationship with an incredible person. And so this whole conversation around like sex, our bodies, when what we came up through was a culture that had a lot of shame baked
Yes.
into all those ideas. And then
Yeah.
particularly you have this interesting overlay as a gay person, like you got a whole 10 extra layers on top
So
of that.
I actually think, here's what I will say. Well, first of all, just how are you having fun? Is it good? Are you having a good time?
Oh my God. Like I wouldn't have gotten here in the way I got here. I wouldn't have written the script in the way it was written for me and handed
Yep.
to me and went, this is your new life.
Sure.
For $1 million, for
Yes.
$10 million. However, now that I am here and I'm recovered and
Yeah.
I've got my feet back under. Yes. I'm like, I love grown up me in this world.
Cool.
I love a grown up man in this world. How
Yeah.
exciting is this? It's
Yeah,
the
that's
best.
really cool. I'm so
Yes.
happy for you.
Everything's
So-
up for negotiation now.
That I actually think I had an easier time with this.
Mm.
This is my assumption, that it was probably better for me than it was for you. And I'm
That's
basing this
interesting.
on my straight sisters, and the friends that I had during different school,
Uh-huh.
in different school environments who ended up being straight, because
Yeah.
all of that nonsense that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So when I came out, I then got to be part of, when I realized who I got to be part of this whole community that like has no standard sex act, where like sex is really talked about in a different way,
That's
where
true.
like people move their bodies around at a pride event, or you're like encouraged to go to a sex toy store with your partner. That's not weird. And it's not like a thing where you're with a man and he's going to feel like, what's wrong with his penis if you like need it's like, it's a totally different
I see what you mean.
openness to conversation. And it's like actually baked into the culture, like queer culture isn't actually about sex, but because it's been criminalized and othered, it also was like embraced and the culture was built around it. So it's like been this amazing gift for somebody that was raised like us, because then I got to like really think about consent. I got to like really think about what I like. I got to really think about like I now know that people with vaginas can have orgasms.
They
like,
can.
They sure can.
It's
so,
such an exciting bit of news.
Yeah, I mean, I actually learned that pretty early after beginning to date women. And so I will say that like that is one of the things when I think about something like what's happening in Florida with like don't say gay, or like we can't acknowledge these things in schools. Yes, it harms the queer folks who are in those schools, but when we don't talk about sex in school, that harms statistically more straight people, because more people are straight. And not talking about sex hurts everybody.
That's right.
And like, yes, women, I guess, because of the thing where we're like, supposed to beat back the dude who wants to pursue us. But like, what is it also like for that guy who has absolutely no instructions and is like
totally
just trying to like jam their tongue down somebody's throat and like hope that person's willing? I mean, this is all insanity. It's
That's
insanity that this is what we have accepted as a culture.
It's so true. Like, the whole posture toward silence being an appropriate response towards sexuality is it's wildly harmful.
It
And,
is. Yes.
and also this isn't new. I mean, a lot of us grew up in a silent purity culture, and it was to devastating effect. Like, let's just look at the data, just
Right.
look at the data. And I think we can agree that this has been a catastrophic approach, and it's really daunting right now to watch some of it roll backwards. Where I thought we had made such gigantic, I thought permanent strides.
Yes.
And now to see so much back on the chopping block of public discourse it's so disorienting.
Right.
It is, I applaud women who, though, are willing, even a second time around in a second chance scenario like I have. And in some ways you do, because you're remarried. We're going to talk about that in a second. To reimagine their sexuality, to reimagine their own bodies, their own pleasure, what they want. They count, they matter.
Totally.
To take shame like out of the equation. What a wonderful like new frontier it has been. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about you. You and I both actually went through kind of a public facing difficult divorce. We have a lot of eyes on us. And for me, I had really baked in a lot of marriage and family material, content, and even instruction. My whole world. So that felt great. That felt really great. I loved that for me. But you opened yourself back up, and I don't know if you were looking for it when it arrived, but love found you. And you remarried during the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about this process for you? Were you scared? Were you gun shy? Did you ever say something reactionary, like, I'm never doing this again, or like, I'm never getting married again? Because I've said some things like that. I don't even know. I don't even believe my own self. But I'd like to hear your story of like second go around.
When you were saying that you were like giving instructions or whatever, I just want to pause on that for a second and just say, like, I mean, yes, I literally had a TV show that was called Take My Wife. That was me and my ex-spouse. So it's all fine. Everything's fine. But
it's fine.
It's all fine. But what will I say? I think one thing I'll just say is that, like, I hope, what I'm hoping is that we could get to a place where it's like, that was actually my best advice at the time. That was actually like how I was doing it at the time. That actually was working at the time.
That's good. That's
or
a
like
very
it wasn't working.
Response to that.
Yeah. Or it wasn't working, but I didn't know that at the time. So I do think that that's like something that is interesting for folks who have like a public positioning around all of this. Like, yeah, we're also allowed to like learn, grow.
That's right.
We're also allowed to have like, I don't even know if make mistakes makes sense, because it's like, how could that have been a mistake if I didn't choose to avoid it?
Turns out we were living a life like everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's what life looks like.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And then like, that's true for anybody, right? Is that like, everybody's just living their life. And I think I just felt like divorce was such a failure. I felt like such a failure. Too. And I just don't know that is anything. I had a lot of people talk to me since, and I asked for a lot of help around that. And
me too. I don't feel that way anymore.
I don't either.
But I did at first.
Yes.
And I also decided not to apply the emotion of regret to any of it, because I couldn't make that make sense. I'm like, what am I going to regret? I'm going to regret the family we built, or I'm going to regret the life I've had. I don't even know how to think of that. I can't even unspool it and create a new one.
Right.
So I'm not going to say regret. I have what I have, and I am where I'm at. And those choices were a part of it. And I don't regret those at all. So I have also learned to take the posture of a learner. What can I learn from this?
Oh yeah,
also,
that's amazing.
It sucks too, because at first, and this was easier and justified, I was able to say, I didn't do any of this. This is my fault. I'm on the victim end of this. This was done unto me. But honesty and growth means going, okay, what parts of this was I a co-creator? What do I own here? And there's plenty. What did I not choose to tell the truth about, even to myself? Right. What was I willing to ignore or pretend about? What were my patterns that if I don't fix it, I'm going to take them into the next one? Oh, that sucks. Yeah, this is why counseling sucks. I was with my counselor this very morning. Yeah. And I was like, I feel an old pattern rising up in me, and I kind of want to act this way, and it's pretty shitty. And she's like, well, let's celebrate that you are recognizing your pattern before you repeat it. I'm 100%. Like, fine. Yeah. Fine. Let's celebrate that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me to try to work through was just anger. Like I felt so angry. I mean, I still have some anger. And I think that's a lot to hold when it's directed at this person that previously was your best person. Yeah. I think that's one thing that makes divorce so difficult, because it is, I think the grief in that is pretty huge and also pretty like unheld. We know how to deal with it. We don't always know how to deal with it like perfectly, but if somebody dies and is like erased from the planet, then we can go to that person's people and we have like, it's a little more clean to understand that person might feel grief. I think in the case of divorce, I think that can get really muddled for folks.
That grief is a beast.
Yeah,
and hard to know what to do with.
Yes. So that, to answer your question about getting remarried, that was the stuff that was the biggest thing to deal with. It wasn't that like I thought, oh, I'll never get married again. It was more so just like, it's some of the stuff you were just talking about, like being in a place of like, just being stuck in my own anger, like stuck in anger where it's like, I'm just having a conversation with myself. That person isn't even here. I'm like yelling at nobody.
Oh, that's right.
Alone in a house, like just like,
oh yeah, I'm familiar.
Is this the life that you would like? And actually this is the moment where then I like Googled and found this class that was called Forgiveness. And I was like, okay, well, thank you, the universe, because that's exactly what I'm curious about. And that's the path that I've really been following, is like, anything that leads to forgiveness, not just toward this person, but then it's like, okay, well then what about the people that like hurt me when I was in college? What about the faith I grew up in? What about my parents who I actually really love, but I still, and like, I'm still really connected to, we have a great relationship, but this thing also happened. They also did this other thing. So, I think in trying again, it's really been from a place of, attempting to value joy, interest, and future focus over some sort of a like revenge fantasy on the whole world, which turns out I had been like really committed to for a long time.
And those only feel good for a minute. They have a pretty quick ROI, like a pretty quick return on investment. Like,
I got stuck in that zone for such a long time. I was in that zone for a long time. This sentence, it's like, they'll regret this or whatever. Like
Totally. Oh man. Again, to your earlier point, I have a generous posture toward our responses to pain now that they're a little bit behind me, which is pain hurts because it's painful. And sometimes those lower level responses, revenge, anger, I don't even call anger lower level, only if it lasts too long. But whatever it is, they have their place. They get us through shock and even trauma until we can clear a little bit of room for actual healing, actual forgiveness, the stuff that'll go the distance.
Right.
I think it's a short-term sprint, some of those reactions, and I'm okay that we had them.
Right.
But yeah, I do prefer moving forward from a place of, let's say, wholeness, optimism, even. This feels better.
Well, and also if not able to be in that place, like if I think that what I realized is that I was actually living my life like for other people, right? So like,
For sure.
if my whole life is like a revenge against the Catholic Church, then it's like, then my epitaph is, you know, like the Catholic Church. Like, it's just like, that's the point of my life. What a bummer to live my life like
That's right.
directed at others that
Totally.
as opposed to just like for what I believe.
That's right. It's the difference between sort of living against something or living
There we
for
go.
something.
Yeah,
You know
there
what
we
I mean?
go. Yes.
Like,
yes.
There's a lot of energy baked into against. I get it. I get its appeal.
Oh
Like
my gosh, that's
it's
well
kind of
said. Yeah.
outrage, you know, it's kind of
Yes.
like fury, which is a
Yes.
lot of adrenaline, which gives us
Yes.
a lot of oomph, but it's also really tiring. And
Yes.
also it lacks a lot of joy.
Oh my
You just
God,
sacrifice it.
This is so well. It's like the character of Twitter versus the character of Instagram. Like,
That's right.
I
That's
just
good.
think Twitter is
That's
literally
good.
like,
Say less.
here's the stuff we hate, and then Instagram is like, but have you thought about a sunset? You know, so
Here's
it's
a brownie.
yeah.
No, it's so true. I quit Twitter 2 years ago for this
Twitter's
reason.
terrible.
I quit it. I just went,
Yes.
I
Good
understand
job.
this is a big portion of my job is this huge community on Twitter. But every time I'm here, I hate everyone. I hate
Yes.
you. I hate myself. I hate the world.
Oh God, yeah.
I had to choose a different way of moving forward. And you're so right. And it's wonderful. Also, I think about, are you 40? How old are you? 41?
I'm 40. Yeah,
40. Okay. We're better now. We are. Like 40-year-old you is better than 35-year-old you. And we're kinder and we're wiser and we're more gentle and we're more mature. I'm more willing to admit where I'm wrong and what I need to change and what belongs to me than I was even 5 or 10 years ago too. And so I think there is something to be said in relationships to say this one that we had, that we chose, that we even married, it had its place. It served us. It gave us virtually everything it could give us for good and for bad. And it just ran its course. Like it ran its course.
Totally.
And this is the new iteration. And I much prefer me right now in the relationship I am in and how I am in it.
I love having those staple classic quality pieces in my wardrobe that you can always rely on to look good and make you feel good and be suitable for like really just about any occasion, especially when traveling. So for me, that looks a lot like the best denim jacket that I wear with everything. A few dresses with sleeves and pockets, of course, so wearable, shorts and jeans, and some cute tops. And then of course, sneakers, sandals, and my favorite backpack and handbags. That's my capsule right there. Able is my go-to for all of the above and more. I literally wear something from Able every single day of the week. Not only do I just love their clothes and their prioritization of inclusive sizing, yay, of course, and as well as their super high quality bags and shoes and accessories. But I've believed in this brand from day one. If you're unfamiliar with Able, they are a fashion company that's not only devoted to like timeless, cool styles, but they also empower women through opportunity and dignity, and always have. It's ethical fashion at its very finest. They're out here doing the good, you guys, and making you look good and feel good too with their clothes. So check them out over at ableclothing.com and then use my code JEN, Jen, to save 15% off anything. So that's ableclothing.com and use code JEN.
I wonder if you, I just feel like I'll virtually have to ask you this as we start to land the plane here.
Yeah.
This new space that you're in, this new chapter, this new marriage, did you you renegotiated essentially a new relationship with your body and your gender? And
yeah, that's right.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I think it's powerful and instructive, and you're modeling something that I feel like a lot of people have a lot of internal dissonance around and don't either have the language for it or know what to do with it. And it seems like to me, you are saying I am wise enough and mature enough to say this about myself.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think the word maturity is definitely in there. So yes, I met my wife is very gentle with me, and that is not a treatment that I have experienced for a lot of my life. My parents are great. They are also very motivating. They're very like, just grew up in like a very, they demand a lot of themselves, and there was a lot of achievement focus. And I think that any chance I would have had to process feelings I had about my body, my gender, like all those things, it just was like, like cute if you want to spend time on that, but like we have to go to swim practice, and then right after that you're going to softball, and then you're going to walk from there to soccer. So there was just a lot of action going on.
Got it.
Not a ton of reflection. And I think I was just walking around pretty hurt for a long time without knowing that that's what was going on. I started doing a lot of work on myself in going through my divorce, like a ton of work. And then I also was looking around to see what kind of spiritual teaching there was. And then I also met this person who just, like, she's just slow and gentle, and like she sees what's going on. I'm like kind of speeding off a cliff at all times, but in like a very charming way.
Me too. We're lovable in that way.
Yeah, exactly. Like she just texted me, she just texted me, can you think of a fun fact about me? I don't know what that means. I'm sure it has something to do with her work, but it's very sweet.
It's so sweet.
So anyway, I had all of those. I'm like getting sort of a little more gentleness, and then I'm developing a little more gentleness with myself. And then in the midst of all that, I got this big job this year. I was on an ABC show called A Million Little Things. I had to take my shirt off on television, which I had never done on TV before. And it just all sort of led to this place where I realized like how much I have been walking through the world armored up. Like, my folks growing up were like, essentially like, make them love you. And I'm like, got it, and then I chose a job where that's what the job says, and then initially I chose a partner where we kind of said that back and forth to each other. And there was a lot that was great about that marriage, but softness on either side wasn't really there. And I don't think I've let myself be soft just many times in my life. I have over and over again made the opposite decision to be harder, more leather jackets. And that's what I'm undoing right now. And I mean, like, it does feel like spiritually I've been shirtless on television for like a few years now, just like more bare. And then it's wild that would actually happen in life, in reality outside of that spiritual zone. And
I love this for you.
Yeah, thank you. And so,
I'm so
self-esteem,
happy for you.
That's the goal, working on self-esteem.
Well, that matters. Like, I think that has kind of a bad rap of being just very self-centric and very like navel gazing. But when we handle that with care, treat it with the respect that it deserves, literally everybody around us flourishes because of it. It affects our relationships.
Totally.
I mean, that's a great good for everybody that has to deal with us.
Oh my God, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that we have that in hand and we're protecting that. And thus makes us better partners, better wives, better friends and sisters and daughters. And so better leaders, frankly, because both of us are in leadership spaces where people listen to what we say, which is dumb, but they do.
It means I need less from you. Like if I like myself, then we can just be having a different conversation.
That's right. They
like
get to be free to not do your heavy lifting.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is what therapy has taught me. Listen, our therapists, man, they have job security. Okay.
Jen, you're awesome.
You're awesome.
I like you so much.
Oh, so much same. If you could only know the things I have left that I want to talk to you about, but we got to go because we have lives. We got to go. But I want to ask you one final question.
Okay.
And I want you to answer this however you want. I ask all my guests this question. And so I borrowed it from an Episcopalian priest who I love. This is her question. And she's like out here kind of like with these sort of wilderness earthy priests. Answer this absurdly, genuinely, anything in between.
All right.
What is saving your life right now?
Oh, what is saving my life right now? This is honestly I can't believe this is the thing I'm going to say. It just truly is what's off the top of my head. Because I usually, like in the last couple of weeks, I've been a little laid up because I had an outpatient surgical procedure.
Yes.
And we were talking about this right before we were recording.
Yep.
And I hate to relax. It is my least good skill. Okay. It is my least developed skill.
Yes.
I hate to relax.
Yeah.
But I've been watching Gordon Ramsay's Hotel Hell, and it is such a good show. And I honestly love anything that Gordon Ramsay does because I don't know what it is. I don't know that man, there's something, he's so good at being what I think is genuine. But here's what I will say. There is like a long spiritual answer to that. There is a spiritual underbelly to this, which is just like anybody who can be with me in my most difficult moments. And one of my most difficult moments is actually letting myself off the hook and relaxing. So right now, Gordon is with me in those moments. And I really appreciate that. He is
love this.
Giving me a chance to lay on the couch, which I hate to do, and being with me in that moment. It is a spiritual experience that we are having together that he does not know about.
This is phenomenal. For the rest of your life, when you see Gordon and specifically this show, this is what you're going to think of. You're going to think about these couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Like, he was your companion.
And you know who was with me during my divorce? Meredith Grey. Like, it's like it's just like there are...
Totally.
And it does matter. This is why something like a podcast matters. So we might be this for somebody. We don't know. Maybe we're on the couch with somebody right now.
I promise you that we are. I promise you, somebody is sitting in their car in park, unwilling to go inside until this conversation's over. That's how this works. Great. And so people hold up lanterns for us, and then we hold them up for people behind us, and then that's how it goes. That's how we like the way. Okay.
Oh, that's beautiful.
A huge fan of you. Absolutely think you are incredible. I love what you're doing. I love who you are. I love your candor. You're obviously so funny. I'm so gifted, a comic and an actor. And so thank you for giving an hour of your time to our show. I am thrilled about it and always cheering you on. Any way I can ever bang the drum for you, you holler.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, mouth agape because you're amazing. So thank you so much for your time and for having me. This is
guess what? Wonderful. I have your cell phone number. So
good. Text me after this. Seriously.
Awesome.
Okay,
Cameron.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Jen.
Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. I mean, when I tell you, I could have picked any one of those areas and built out 3 podcasts with Cameron around any one of them. I mean, any of it, faith, deconstruction, and reconstruction. We could have gone on and on and on about comedy and acting and performing. We could have talked about marriage and divorce. We could have talked about remarriage and finding love again. I mean, it was just all in there. So thanks for being on the roller coaster ride with us. I loved everything she had to say. And I just wanted her to keep talking because she's just so vibrant and bright. And, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And if you're not already watching her over on ABC on A Million Little Things, get over there. You can also watch this podcast over on my YouTube channel. If you'd like to see Cameron and watch our conversation, we'll see what she looks like and our body language and our laughter and our facial expressions. Go over to my YouTube channel, and every podcast is visually recorded as well. Or obviously right into your little earbuds if you just want to listen to it. So thanks for listening. This series continues to delight me and stretch me and challenge me and help me feel comforted and seen. And I hope it's doing the same for you. More to come. Don't miss any. If you've missed any episodes in the love and dating and sex and relationship series, go back and pick them up. And speaking of, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, today is the day. just hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and this will show up for you week after week without you trying for it at all in your phone. Guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for being the best podcast community in the entire world. Laura and her team and Amanda and I love you so much, and we love to serve you, and we love to build this space. We're constantly dreaming up new dreams, and we have so much in store for you for the rest of this year. All right, you guys, that's it. See you next week.